Let's chat scaling to $1 million and what it really takes to scale simply and sustainably. I find it super fun to think about having $1 million company, but before our business can scale to $1 million or multi millions, if that is what you're after, we really have to step into becoming the $1 million CEO who can actually hold it. So the reframe here is that $1 million year isn't just about numbers. It's about leadership, it's about systems, and it's about capacity. And it's not just about what you do, it's really about who you're becoming. And I want to touch on this throughout this lesson because I think that is really, really important. You know, there was a time where when I started my business that I had this sort of idea that once we got to a certain level of income, like whether it was six figures or multi six figures, that the pressure would go down. And it's kind of funny that I thought that for my own business when I know what it was like to scale a company from 7 figures to 8 figures. And literally, I was managing a team and growing a team to 160 people, and I had massive responsibility. But as your business grows, as you're bringing on team members, as your communities grow online, also the pressure tends to grow with delivering on everything that you're doing, and you're holding more and more. And I started to realize for myself that I really had to become stronger in so many different aspects in order to actually grow and keep growing and scaling my business. And so this is what this lesson is all about. So today we're going to go really internally a little bit more to start off. And I want you to spend some time really journaling on this, sitting with this, reflecting on this. But who do you need to be? Who do you need to be in order to really embody that CEO that already owns and runs $1 million or multi-million dollar company? And some questions that I have for you here is, how do I move, plan, and communicate and work when I already lead $1 million company? How would you show up online? What would you stop doing? Where would you invest more time, energy, effort? What boundaries would you hold that you're not holding right now? And what stories would you share? Those are some questions that I want you to reflect on and journal on and write them down, because ultimately, this is how you need to start leading now for this to become something that you're naturally embodying, for you to be able to hold that level of responsibility, for you to be able to energetically be an actual match to have $1 million company and to maintain and keep growing $1 million company. The embodiment of that energy is key, which means that you can already show up like that now. And that doesn't mean you're going to start spending like you have $1 million business. This is a little side note, but it does mean that you're going to be starting to move with a different energy, to hold yourself with a different energy, to present yourself from a different angle, and to share from this place of conviction and power and certainty, because deep within yourself, you already know that this is inevitable for you and that you're moving towards that. So we're not changing who we are when we hit $1 million in our company. We become that person first, and ultimately, because we start moving differently, the results can follow. And this also ties into a secondary piece that is absolutely essential, and I've learned this lesson the hard way. But your nervous system equals your capacity. Fight or flight is not a foundation for scale. Fight or flight is not a foundation for scale. Most people will not be able to scale beyond 6 figures from a place of survival, because eventually it will stop working. And as somebody who literally experienced having $100,000 a month and then going into fight or flight and self-sabotaging myself for months and months after, and literally kind of not being able to regulate myself until I learned some practices, was a huge lesson for this. And that happened to me in 2023. And there was no reason I couldn't have scaled my business to multi 6 figures that year, other than I was in complete fight or flight and I wasn't ready to experience hitting my upper limit when I had a $100,000 month in January of 2023. So trust me when I say this, learning how to regulate your nervous system now as you're growing, as you're scaling is really, really important. So above the strategies, above and beyond the systems, what you need to rest. What can you do to help you regulate your nervous system, whether that's through breath work or meditation, or if you live in beautiful Mexico, maybe temazcals, going to the beach? Like, what are some of the things that you need beyond the strategic insights that can actually help you balance your nervous system? When you have no self-regulations, you probably won't be able to raise your prices, lead your team effectively, and or lead yourself in your marketing through all the seasons of your life. When you know how to regulate yourself, you'll be able to show up regardless of what's happening in your life, regardless of the circumstances. Nervous system regulation and scaling goes hand in hand. Your capacity is not just the capacity of your systems, it's the capacity of what you can actually hold as the person that's behind leading that business, that's behind leading that team. And that is something that I really want you to take to heart and to think about. And you can start this work now, and it will benefit you in all areas of your life beyond business. But this is really a super, super powerful, lesson and thing that you can do. So let's get a little bit more strategic. Now that we've spoken about the energetic side of scaling to 1 million, what does it actually take to do that from a business side? So there's two main ways in which we can actually set our businesses up to scale to $1 million in revenue and sales. One, we can look at our prices, right? Like, what do we need to do to increase our prices so that with a same or similar number of customer mix, we can actually get to these higher revenue numbers. And the secondary piece is serving more people. And most of the time you can scale with either one or both. Either of them will require structure as well as confidence and conviction in your decision. But most of the time it's best if we approach it from a little bit of both. We want to figure out what we need to do to raise your prices. That may also mean creating more higher ticket or more, more in demand, or like different kind of offers that allow you to really elevate what you're charging already, or the experience that you're delivering, that allow you to raise your prices. And then also your capacity, meaning serving the number of people that you would need to serve. That's where we need to really look at your systems and your infrastructure ready to serve. Maybe, going from make it 100 clients a year to 1,000 clients a year. Can you actually manage that? Can you actually handle that? Is your business actually set up for that? So those are two ways we can come about it from a strategic perspective. And it does take personal conversations. It does take us looking at your specific business around what needs to happen to get you to $1 million, not just from this energetic perspective, but from the strategic perspective, and actually putting pen to paper, getting the good old spreadsheet out and looking at this. Couple things that I'm adding here. So I used to be in revenue management. That's actually one of the first things I did. I became really good at making people more money in their business. In my case, it was in a hotel, and I learned a lot about revenue management, pricing, where it came from, all sorts of different stuff. And it's always helped me. But one thing that I really learned during the time as a revenue manager was that really you want to raise your prices when your demand is high, or you raise your prices if you raise your standard. Okay, raising your standard means that you elevate the experience, that you're adding certain things, and then you can raise your prices. But also when demand is high, when you're already booked up, this is a time to actually raise your prices, and you want to do it intentionally, right? You don't want to just go from one day to the other, you double your prices and make an announcement to all of your existing clients. You probably lose a lot of people, right? Have a strategy behind raising your prices with existing clients, have a strategy with raising your prices publicly, and make sure that your standard and your price increase matches. Don't undersell yourself too. This is another piece that I want to mention here that oftentimes happens, but I've also not sold offers because I actually had them priced too low. I still remember the days, it was 2021, when I raised my one-to-one coaching. It was 6 months of business coaching at that point in time. weekly coaching sessions, unlimited support on voice messages for 6 months. And I had it sold for $3,500. And I remember having such a hard time selling it. The moment I raised my prices to $12,000, I signed 2 clients, which is kind of ridiculous. So I made like 4 or 5 times the amount of money in 2 sales, and it took me months to make before at the beginning of 2021. So don't undersell what you secretly resent. And I was feeling resentful towards charging $3,500 for 6 months of my mentorship and guidance and strategic insights when I literally was available to people almost 24/7. Like I said, I learned a lot along the way. And then honor your delivery as well. Okay, which is super important. You don't want to compromise service in order to scale. Okay, so another thing around scaling to $1 million, your company obviously needs to be ready for it. So scaling with structure is really, really key. Take your time to implement the systems to hold more clients and deliver on your promises. So digital programs, SOPs and team processes, evergreen visibility and lead gen, clean onboarding and offboarding of clients, smart automations, and then a tech stack for scale. And I dropped on this slide and below this lesson some examples of what I'm using. But those are just some insights around how you can actually create the structure to hold as you scale, and you can actually support yourself from a time capacity and deliver on your promises. Again, you don't want to scale fast and then drop the ball on everyone and then drop back down again. You want to scale sustainably and steadily and actually keep growing as you go instead of going up and then down. And you've really been preparing already. This is sort of like the end of this course, the end of this program. We've been covering a lot already, and everything that I've taught you throughout the Simplicity to Six Figures Micromind and this course area is all about getting you ready to scale. We spoke about reusing launch content. We've spoken about making a plan to build a portal exactly like this one to support your private clients if you do mentorship. For example, we spoke about setting up automations, and we've set up automations for you. We streamlined your delivery and your onboarding. You're already setting yourself up for scaling. And now it's about optimizing it, leveraging it, and really adding that energetic piece and embodiment to it to get to this next level. So the actions for you from this lesson is really simple. I want you to do some journaling around who you need to be, what you need to embody, but also what needs to shift in you, right, to lead $1 million business. Get real with yourself, get honest with yourself, and then also look at what needs to shift in your systems to support that as well. Start building from that future today. Start building from that CEO mindset today. Start literally approaching your business like it's a big business right now. Ditch this small business mentality and start growing for the long term. It will 100% pay off. Even if you don't want $1 million business, trust me, the relaxation and the peace and the ease and the flow that you're going to be feeling in your business if you're approaching it from this mindset is going to be feeling sensational. So let me know what's coming up for you in the Slack. This is such a fun conversation for us to dive into. And if you want to map out what $1 million year looks like for you, and you want to sort of chat about what one-to-one work can look like together to make it work as partners, reach out to me. Let's schedule an extra call, what that could look like. And I'm so excited for you as you are setting the stage for your $1 million business.